welcome back to the Second and Two podcast. I'm your host, TB. I'm joined today by my co-host, producer extraordinaire, Jody. What's up, Joe?
Oh, what's good, bro?
Well, we're in the middle of June. I mean, you got OTAs and all of those good things going. I mean, there's some stuff happening in the NFL, but really not a whole lot. Like, for clarity's sake, like the big story of today is like the Rams re-signed Sony Michel on a 1-year deal. Like that's the kind of news we're getting these days. So
The running back, huh?
he was part of their Super Bowl winning team. There you go. Bring him back. Yeah, I mean, honestly, the biggest news in sports right now is like the NBA draft is coming up and there's all kinds of trades happening, things like that. So we're really not talking a whole lot of NFL news in the sports world these days, but you and I are going to power through anyway.
Yep, we're back with our weekly divisional round preview. Yeah, I mean, we got the AFC North this week. Talking Ravens, Bengals, Steelers, Browns.
Mm-hmm.
All the good stuff. So it's going to be a crazy division. I mean, I feel like it has been the past couple of years. But, with all the stuff that the Ravens are doing now, pretty crazy.
Well, I think the best stat that we can give to kind of really talk about this division, it's the only division in football last year where every team went 3-3 in the division. All 4 teams went 3-3 against each other in 2022. Over the last 20 years, it's consistently been one of the most competitive divisions. Now, it's usually been a 3-team race. The Steelers, the Bengals, the Ravens.
Yeah.
But in about the last three years, the Browns have kind of they've been better. They've been a better team. Yeah. So I'll give you some tidbits about the division. All right, Joe.
Sure.
Every team has won a playoff game since 2016. Every team in this division. Can you name each team's last playoff win, at least a year?
Ooh. So the Bengals, obviously last year.
Yep, last year their most recent win was at the Bills in the divisional round.
There you go. Ravens, I will say maybe 2020. We'll go 2020.
2020, they won a wild card game at the Titans.
All right. Steelers. It was Big Ben's last year, I believe. No, I think they just made it. I don't think he won.
Yeah. Yep, you're right.
Let's go 2018.
2016, they won a divisional game at the Chiefs. That was when Alex Smith was still the starting quarterback. They still had the Killer Bees with Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown.
They were a real team still.
Yeah. It's actually surprising that the Steelers are the team that has the longest playoff win drought right now. Yeah.
And then the Browns was with Baker. I don't know what year that was.
2020.
There you go. I was gonna say we talked about it last week.
They actually won the wild card game at the Steelers in 2020.
Oh.
Yep. So that's each team's most recent playoff win. The last time the Browns won the division, Jody, I don't think you're going to get this.
56 or something.
Okay, well, that's a little disrespectful, I think, for you to go that deep right there. that's a shot to the heart of every Browns fan.
I think seriously, if I'm being serious, I think it's like 92 or something.
Really close. 1989. What's actually going to blow your mind right now? The Titans, the Jaguars, and the Oilers have more recent wins in this division because it used to be the AFC Central that morphed into the AFC North, and the Titans, Jags, and Oilers won the AFC Central since the last time the Browns won the AFC Central. The Browns have actually never won the AFC North.
Dang. That's
not
a good look.
Yeah. The Bengals and Browns obviously have no Super Bowl wins. The Ravens have 2 Super Bowl wins. One with Coach Harbaugh. And then the Steelers have 6 Super Bowl wins. Obviously, they've got one with Tomlin
Yeah.
over the Cardinals. He made that second trip, and they lost to Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, if you remember, start of the 2010 decade.
Mm.
Let's see. Okay, so this is another fun tidbit. Speaking of Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh, this division has 2 of the 3 longest tenured head coaches in the NFL right now. Can you name the longest tenured?
Outside of them two, let's go Billy B.
Yeah. So Bill Belichick is 1, Mike Tomlin is 2, John Harbaugh is 3.
Dang.
So Tomlin has been the head coach going on 17 years. He was named the head coach in 2007. Harbaugh has been the head coach going on 16 years. He was named the head coach in 2008.
Mm.
Tomlin and Harbaugh are the only pair of head coaches to face off more than 25 times in the Super Bowl era. They've actually faced off 33 times total so far. This year will make at least 35.
Yeah.
Tomlin has won 18 matchups and Harbaugh has won 15, so they're pretty close to being almost
Dang.
even. Yeah.
Pretty well. Steelers own the Raven, low key.
18-15. Yeah.
It's still an edge.
Um, then the last little tidbit I have for you. This division has a very good shot to have all 4 teams finish above 500 and maybe have 3 or even 4 playoff teams from one division.
Is that possible? Yeah, I
3
think
wild cards.
I think the AFC or the NFC East last year almost did it, right? For a little bit.
The NFC East had 3 playoff teams, 2 wild cards, and then yeah, the Commanders kind of fell out. But
Yeah.
yeah, no one. I mean, we've only had the 3 wild card teams for a few years now,
Yeah.
and so no division has ever gotten all of its teams in the playoffs because obviously before a few years ago it wasn't possible. So maybe the AFC North in 2023 can be that division.
That'd be pretty crazy. I mean, I guess
I
it kind of relies on the Browns, right? According, because our Steelers, bro, our guy Tomlin, never had a losing record.
Tomlin has put his team in position pretty much year in and year out. Yeah, it would probably come down to the Browns. Obviously, we think the Ravens and the Bengals are both going to be very, very good. So yeah, it would likely come down to the Browns and whether or not they can get themselves right this year. Speaking of those Browns,
Yeah, the Browns, they went 7-10 last year, finished last in the division, making them miss the playoffs. I mean, we kind of touched on it. I mean, they didn't have Deshaun for the longest. I'm not saying that makes a difference early on or not. I don't know, but
hmm
he was suspended like 12 games or something. So
yeah,
I'm sure that has a little factor at least.
yeah. The Browns, obviously, yes, bringing Deshaun back later in the year last year was sort of a different situation for them. There was obviously a lot going on with that. He was okay when he came back, not great. I would think that they're expecting obviously much better things from him this year, considering what they paid him, what
Yeah.
they traded for to get him, all of that. In terms of studying their roster, they did have quite a bit of turnover this year. They lost free agent linebacker Deion Jones. Safety John Johnson III is actually still out there as a free agent right now.
Mm.
Could be signed any day now. But it looks like he's not going back to Cleveland, so we'll count that as a loss. Edge to Davion Clowney, another guy who's actually still unsigned. The likelihood says he's going to wait until kind of in the middle of camp to kind of not
Play
have to do
wild
camp.
card. Yeah.
Yeah, see what happens with teams. He wants to be on a contender, so it kind of makes sense. Jacoby Brissett went and signed in Washington. Kareem Hunt, another guy who's just kind of out there right now, waiting to see if he can find a team. D lineman Taven Bryan, offensive tackle Chris Hubbard, guard Joe Haig, edge Chase Winovich, cornerback Greedy Williams, and safety Ronnie Harrison. All guys who won't appear to be back in Cleveland, whether they're unsigned right now or they actually did sign with another team, but all teams that appear that will not be back with Cleveland. You look at what they brought in. They signed D lineman Dalvin Tomlinson, kind of their biggest signing in the offseason. They brought in edge Darius Smith from Minnesota, which was a big-time deal for them. Safety Juan Thornhill, edge Ogbo Okoronkwo, receiver Elijah Moore, safety Rodney McLeod, quarterback Josh Dobbs, receiver Marquise Goodwin, and D lineman Maurice Hurst. So they brought in a lot of these guys are more or less going to fill depth pieces, a couple starters in there, but definitely help themselves in terms of becoming a deeper football team in free agency.
Yeah. Josh Dobbs is an interesting one. I mean, my guy was on the Titans last year, and now he's here.
Yeah, I mean he'll
Jacoby, bring him in.
Yeah, he'll fill the backup quarterback role for sure.
Yeah. But looking at some people they added in the draft too, they had a receiver Cedric Tillman and a D lineman Siaki Ika. I mean, it seems like they beefed up their defense, but also a lot of defensive dudes in general, so it makes sense.
Yeah, and Siaki Ika is a guy who I remember I told you this D-line class when we looked at the draft was kind of thin. He was a guy who was just outside my top 5. Despite it being a thin draft class there, he was a guy that I did like. They also drafted DeJuan Jones, the tackle from Ohio State. He was a top 5, he's the 5th best guy on my board.
Yeah.
Quarterback Dorian Thompson-Robinson is kind of a sneaky one out of UCLA. He could be that third quarterback that, we talked about being active on game days. He might be that kind of role for them. And he's a different kind of player. He's got a lot of athleticism, had a long career at UCLA. So we'll see if maybe he can make the roster, become that third quarterback for them.
And the management coaching staff, they got general manager Andrew Berry, head coach Kevin Stefanski. I almost said HC, just reading it off the paper. Offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt, and D coordinator Jim Schwartz.
They bring back similar staff, though. They did add Jim Schwartz to be the DC this year. I think the Browns are hoping to be better defensively, and Schwartz should be able to give them a little extra juice there. I think is the hope. Obviously, when you look at this Browns team, I think the strength starts up front. Their O-line is arguably the best offensive line in football, right? I mean, every name is a guy that they're right there with Philly. I know last year Philly was definitely the best. Losing Isaac Seumalo, and having to replace him, losing a little bit of their depth, Andre Dillard, that kind of stuff. Maybe the Browns can challenge. I still think Philly's got the deepest O-line in football, but the Browns might have the best first 5. So at left tackle, Jedrick Willis Jr., he's a dude. Left guard, Joel Bitonio. Center, Ethan Pocic. Right guard, Wyatt Teller. And right tackle, Jack Conklin. That's a really good group up front. And then obviously some guys backing them up. James Hudson the third at tackle, but then also DeJuan Jones. So they just drafted from Ohio State. And then Drew Forbes and Nick Harris give them more interior O-line depth. Joe, you look like you wanted to. You were questioning my thought on this group. I could tell.
For what, the lineman?
Yeah.
Oh nah, I just been sitting here. I was trying to I guess solidify if I knew who you were talking about this whole time. DeJuan Jones, he was the right tackle.
Yeah. He was opposite Paris Johnson. Yep. I thought you were gonna hit me with I don't think the Browns are the best 5.
Oh,
so
no,
I was ready.
If you continue with the list, our guy Nick Chubb back there, he's one of the best running backs in the league, I would say. And
for
you
sure.
got those dudes blocking for you. I mean, I guess it kind of adds up.
Yeah. Going through the obviously at quarterback, Deshaun Watson comes back. He'll have a full year this year. Josh Dobbs backing him up. At running back, you got Nick Chubb. And backing up Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt is gone. So a guy I think that you would expect to take a bigger role Temecula's very own Dimitri Felton Jr.
Yeah. He was getting some
Um,
reps in special teams like last year and the year before, I think. He was
yeah,
getting
I think he'll probably do some more for them offensively this year. Guy that we had to play against in high school, extremely fast and quick. I can attest. I still remember. This. This is a quick 30-second aside. The team he was on, Great Oak High School, went empty. He was the number 3 receiver. We were playing cover 2. And the way we played it, the mic had to match up with number 3. Like I was playing the safety to that side, and I had to play between 1 and 2, right? Because it's cover 2. And the mic was I forget his name. He's not a bad player, but he was a regular high school linebacker playing against what is eventually an NFL running back out of the slot, and just he just ran vertical down the pipe, and they threw it up to him and it scored. And our head
was it Coy or
no, I can't remember his
what year was
name.
it?
It was
Senior?
it was 2014, yeah, our senior year. He
Um,
was an underclassman. He was younger than us. I don't remember his name
uh,
though. I can picture him, but I don't remember his name.
Batista? I don't know.
No, yeah, I couldn't tell you. But
Uh,
yeah, I remember our head coach was yelling, and he was yelling at me because he thought I busted the coverage.
yeah.
And
Because you just
I was like,
smoked so bad.
no, coach, it was cover 2. Like that's the mic.
Yeah.
And then he went and yelled at the defensive coordinator instead because he was asking why the heck we played that coverage versus that look, and how did we end up with a matchup where our mic was covering Dimitri Felton. So anyway, long story short, the dude scored like a 60-yard touchdown on us. Our head coach thought it was my fault, but it wasn't. Probably not the greatest call versus that look. It was a tough one. Yeah, tough L we took on that day. Yeah, we ended up losing the game. It was a good game though, but we ended up losing. I remember that. So looking back at their team, their receivers, Amari Cooper at the X, Cedric Tillman will probably back him up. David Njoku at the Y, at the tight end spot. They like to use him in a lot of different creative ways. At the R, they bring in Elijah Moore out of the Jets. I think he's really excited to be there. They also have Jakeem Grant behind him. And then at the Z, Donovan Peoples-Jones, been a really good player for where he was drafted out of Michigan for about the last 3 or 4 years for the Browns. He's done a really nice job, had a solid season last year. And then they bring in Marquise Goodwin to give them a super speed threat as well. You look at these receivers, it's a group that's going to attack vertically. Cedric Tillman and Marquise Goodwin bring a lot of speed. Donovan Peoples-Jones in his own right, whereas Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore, more your kind of route technicians. So I do think they have a good mix of weapons here for Deshaun Watson, for Kevin Stefanski calling the offense as well. Defensively, Myles Garrett on the edge, obviously a stalwart in this defense. Inside, you got Dalvin Tomlinson, Jordan Elliott. On the other edge, they bring in Zadarius Smith. They also have Ogbo Okoronkwo to give him depth. Alex Wright inside, the recent signing of Maurice Hurst, and then the draft pick Ika Siaki, giving them more depth as well. So they actually have a pretty decent depth up front. You look at the linebackers, Jock Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah at the will linebacker out of Notre Dame, had a really good first year. Figures to be an important player for them. Anthony Walker Jr. in the middle with Sion Takitaki backing him up. Then in the nickel corner spot, you got Grant Newsome II, who's kind of become one of the better nickel corners in the league. He's a really good coverage player there. On the back end, Denzel Ward with Mike Ford behind him at the corner spot. Juan Thornhill comes in his first year, starting at the free safety. Grant Delpit at the strong safety. Rodney McLeod giving them some depth behind him. And then at the other corner spot, Martin Emerson Jr., he's going to have to replace what they had with Greedy Williams. And we'll see what he does this year.
All right, so I had to pull up our roster from that year because I was curious, right?
Uh-huh.
And so my first couple guesses off top: Austin Smith,
No.
Jose Corral.
That's who it was. It was Jose.
Jose.
Shout out Jose. If you ever listen to this podcast, sorry that we're giving you a shout out for getting burnt. But in reality, that was not a great matchup for you, so you shouldn't feel bad about it at all.
All right, quick random note. I just played Fortnite with this dude like 3-4 days ago.
Wow. That's insane.
Yeah, pretty
That's
funny.
insane, actually. That's a crazy coincidence. Wow.
Yeah, so
Tell
he
him to
ended up
listen
going.
to the pod.
He went to NAU, rushed the fraternity I was in, and so a homie I know from our fraternity, who he was in his pledge class, I guess he kept in touch with him, and yeah, the rest is
There
history.
you go. The rest is history. There you go.
All right, so after that quick, off-topic discussion, we're looking at the schedule for the Browns. The Browns start off versus the Bengals. Tough matchup off rip. Playing them at home. Not only is it the Bengals, but it's their first divisional game. They actually play all 3 of their divisional games in the first 4 weeks. That's
Yeah.
kind of unfortunate. So the second week they play the Steelers in Pittsburgh on a Monday night game. That's fun.
Mm-hmm.
Considering
Tough.
what we just talked about in that first. There's the team that they got to pull off that win if they want to compete for that last spot in the playoff picture. Week 3 and 4 they're at home. They play the Titans and then the Ravens. Dang, another team with a quick bye. The first one you can get week 5. Coming out that bye, it's not looking too good. They're playing the Niners at home though, so that's good. And they travel for 2 games. They got the Colts and the Seahawks. So they go to Indianapolis and then they got to travel across the country all the way up to Seattle. They got the Cardinals at home following that Seahawks game. Then they play the Ravens again, week 10 in Baltimore. Week 11, they play the Steelers. That's tough, just playing 2 back-to-back divisional games again. Kind of unfortunate. The Steelers is at home this time. And they go on the road for 2 games. They go out to Denver. Following that, they go out to LA, play the Rams. And they got 2 home games here, week 14 and 15. They got the Jaguars at home and the Bears. Let's see, week 16, they play the Texans in Houston. Week 17, they got a tough Thursday night game versus the Jets, but they're at home at least. And then they close out with the Bengals. Dang, they play the Bengals the first week and the last week.
Looking at it, I think the first 6 weeks of their schedule is really tough. You mentioned they play 3 divisional games in the first 4 weeks. Having to go open the year with the Bengals, then at the Steelers on Monday Night Football. That's a really tough two
Tough
game
schedule.
opener, right? Then the nice thing for them is they basically get to be at home for 4 straight weeks with games against the Titans and Ravens, the bye, and then coming out of the bye, a home game versus the Niners. However, those 3 opponents are tough opponents, right? The Titans are, a middling, borderline playoff team. The Ravens, we obviously think are a real contender. The Niners, we think are a real contender. I mean, so that's a pretty tough first 6 weeks, even with the bye in there and having more home games than road games. You figure in the first 6 weeks of the year, they only have to go on the road once.
Mm-hmm.
So you would think that makes it easier, but I mean, the level of opponent, the quality of opponent there makes that a really tough stretch. So I do think that's probably their toughest stretch of the year, despite being at home for a good chunk of it. You look then kind of going forward, it doesn't get much easier, man. They got to go to the Seahawks, right?
Yeah.
Um, Playing at Mile High is not a fun experience. I do think, however, weeks 12 through 16 is probably the easiest stretch of games in terms of their opponents. At the Broncos, at the Rams, versus the Jaguars, versus the Bears, at the Texans. Having to make that back-to-back West Coast trip with the Broncos in Mile High, then the Rams in LA, that's not an easy trip by any means, but both those teams are teams looking to bounce back this year. So you don't know what kind of season those teams will be having by that point. The Jaguars, we obviously think are, at least a contender to win their division. The Bears could be a team that could be much improved, but you don't know. They're kind of young. And then the Texans, we've talked about where they're at in terms of being kind of a team in transition. So it's not by any means easy. I think this is a tough schedule, despite playing the AFC South. There's some pretty tough games on the schedule, and the way that it shakes out, I don't think that the Browns got a traditional fourth place schedule here. It's a really tough one.
Especially when the Jets are considered the fourth place.
Yeah,
That's always
yeah. It's not a traditional fourth place opponent. Yeah, it's a tough schedule, no doubt. And I think as we get to record predictions here, we'll kind of talk about that part.
Yeah. Well, I mean, before I get into that, I will say when I was reading it, I couldn't really tell what would be the easy stretch. The one you mentioned, I didn't realize till after you talked about your like tough stretch. But other than that, it's like it's pretty well rounded schedule. Or it's not like anything's too easy or too hard at one point. Well, I guess
Yeah.
the hard part is truly the hard part, but after that, it's like it all seems pretty even.
I think they play. It's a tough setting. It's
Yeah.
just it's tough. And
And the
the more
division
I
doesn't
look
help.
at the more I look at NFL schedules, the more it's like you just realize that there are no easy weeks in the NFL, and that's just
True.
so evident in the
Every game,
way,
any given Sunday.
yep, the results, the way things happen. It's always, there's always so many unexpected things, and that this is why, because it's just, the quality of competition is so great.
Yeah. So with our predictions for their record, you had them going 9-8. I had them at 7-10 again. For me, I was just thinking if it might not seem like they improved, right, being 7-10, but I think we kind of talked about it like a week or two ago, where it's I don't remember what team, but it was basically that the team they'll be much better. Like the team itself will be better than what it was, but they'll still perform the same just based off what the schedule is.
Yeah, yeah. I do think that this offensive line is so good. Chubb is so good. You get a full year of Deshaun Watson. Jim Schwartz brings a different attitude defensively. They have some playmakers there. I think this is a good football team. I think they're a borderline playoff football team, but they play in a really hard division. I just explained they have a really hard schedule. And even with all that being said, I really respect this team because I think the talent is as good
Yeah,
as any of the other
absolutely.
teams in the division. So I'm going to say that they're going to go 9-8. I think Deshaun Watson has something to prove this year. You know, and that's and that's professionally, personally. I think he's got a lot to prove to everybody, right? To people around him, to the NFL, to fans, all of that, and which is not
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
frame it as some kind of like comeback story, like that's not what we're trying to do here. But I do imagine that he is very motivated to have a much better season. And I think he has the pieces around him to be successful. So if he does that, the Browns are really dangerous. So I think 9-8 is very likely for them just because they're a good football team, but they play a really hard schedule.
Yeah, facts. I agree. Couldn't get more of the truth on that statement. But a question I had for you was, do you think that Deshaun Watson can get back to his play that he had in Houston when he made a little trip to the playoffs real quick?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's the question on everybody's mind. I think if you're a Browns fan, are you going to get what you paid for, right?
Yeah, played the
In
big
terms
bucks for
of
him.
draft capital and money, financial investment. You look back at his stats last year; it was very pedestrian. He went 3-3 in the games that he started. Threw for 1,100 yards in those games. He had a 7-5 touchdown to interception ratio. So that was an average of about 183 yards a game, 1.1 touchdowns, 0.83 picks, 29 rushing yards per game. So if you average that out over the course of a season, it's not like he would have had a fantastic year last year, which
Yeah,
in all reality, considering the circumstances, he didn't play football for basically almost 2 full years and then was with the team, got to train with the team in the offseason, but then didn't train with them
couldn't do
all
nothing
in the
till
season.
the 12th week.
Yeah, it was like he could train with them, with practice with them for like 4 weeks, the last 4
Yeah,
weeks of his
prior to
suspension.
his
So he was only really practicing with the team for a month before his first start, and so you put all that together, and I think it just wasn't a recipe for him to be very good. So, but
Yeah.
what I will say is there were some games that I watched. I really watched this Bengals game. I thought this was where he played his best football as the second start back. There's some evidence here that you could say, hey man, he could go duel with Joe Burrow. Like he threw a strike right there to Amari Cooper on the out route.
Yeah, Amari
This
Cooper
is
was a beast for them last year too.
yeah. This was in Cincinnati, a game that they ended up losing. Their offense didn't actually score that many points, but you look at statistically, they put up a lot of yards. Their problem was they didn't finish drives. But
Hmm.
you kind of look at like the athleticism right here, right? He's got a rusher in his face off the play action, still able to get the throw off, and it's a really positive gain, about 15 yards. You can see it really well from this angle, off the boot action, right in his face, and gets it out of his hands quick. That athleticism. There's Demetric Felton in the backfield, and here they run a little
From the
speed option
offense,
with him,
oh, he kept
and
it up.
again, you can see his athleticism though, and all the different things that they can do with him. Right? You got Demetric Felton and Nick Chubb in the backfield. It ends up being Deshaun Watson who actually has the ball. So that lets you know what kind of athlete he is. And here we go, kind of at the end of the half. He's trying to get him in field goal range. Throws a dart right through the teeth of the defense, finds the hole in the zone, right? Gets him in a position where they might be able to go get that field goal at the end of half. Poof. Nice job finding the soft spot in the zone. And then here was a drive in the second half, right, where he leads them down the field. This is where they score their only touchdown of this game. Throws the comeback route to Donovan Peoples-Jones. That's a really tough route to throw, right? You gotta have some juice on zip on the ball to make sure that it gets in there. Gets over the flat defender, but underneath that corner coming back. Throws it on time. Here he goes, identifying he's going to get some pressure. Step up, don't see it, run.
We'll say just based off these couple plays, my guy needs to learn how to slide.
Yeah, needs a little bit of help there for sure. But again, the thing that you notice is like the athleticism is definitely still there. He's still a younger guy. You look here, coming off the play action fake, straight drop back, step up. Great job in the pocket. Throws a strike to Donovan Peoples-Jones. Again, a guy who he developed a lot of chemistry with last year. I told you it's had a couple good years, but seemed like he and Deshaun Watson really connected. I could see that being a very mutually beneficial pairing this year over the course of a whole season. Here he comes again. Buying time. Great feet in the pocket. Again, finds Donovan Peoples-Jones on the sideline. Or actually, this one was Amari Cooper, I should say. Finds Amari Cooper working back to the sideline, puts it on him so he can catch the ball, get out of bounds. But his feet in the pocket are still very good. His athleticism is still there. He's got great arm talent. All the things that made him a high pick still exist. I think a full offseason in this offense with Stefanski and with these weapons will make him a guy who, they're going to feel.
Sure.
Yeah, they're going to feel like they're getting the money's worth that they paid him. Now in terms of, obviously he's got to stay out of trouble, off the field and all that. What happened with him in Houston, but on the field as a product, like he's still right there. You watch these throws that he's making. He throws another strike into zone coverage right to Njoku. And this is the other thing. The other thing you notice is that he's spreading the ball around. It's not like
He's just standing on
he's
the money.
finding Amari Cooper every play, right? He's getting the ball to all these guys. We're seeing Njoku, Peoples-Jones, Njoku again here in the flat, who puts it on him, gives him a chance to make a play, create yards after the catch.
Gets like 15.
It's Amari. It's Nick Chubb, right? It's all the weapons in this offense. With that offensive line, this could be a really sneaky, dangerous offense this year. And now here's the last play of the drive, the little drive capper.
PD.
Great sell on the play action fake. Get the ball to your guy in the flat and let Njoku go score. And Njoku was on fire for those last three plays.
And
Great job of selling the fake, getting the ball to Njoku.
D lineman definitely thought he had a free shot right there.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They all clear
So
out.
I think Deshaun will have a much better year. I think he's got something to prove. I think the Browns could look much improved offensively in 23.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it because that O line got to translate somewhere, and if it's the W category, then hey, this division just gets more exciting than it already is. Let's see. The next team we're taking a look at
For sure.
today is the Ravens. They went 10-7, finished second in the division, and then they lost in that first round of the playoffs last year. Another team that consistently been good ever since Lamar's been there. So look forward to see what they got going forward this year.
Yeah, they're another team that, underwent some change in this offseason, but I think most of their losses were aging veterans, guys who were probably going to be on their way out, right? You look at guys like cornerback Marcus Peters, D lineman Calais Campbell, receiver Sammy Watkins, edge Justin Houston. Some other guys that really helped them last year, I thought, cornerback Kyle Fuller, safety Chuck Clark, guard Ben Powers. Those losses are, they're going to feel all of these losses. I think some guys more so in terms of veteran presence and leadership than on-field production. Some guys more on-field production, but they did do a decent job of identifying certain things in free agency and bringing some guys in. They brought in cornerback Rock Ya-Sin, which helps fill that need at corner. They brought in receiver Nelson Aguilar, who is going to give them great depth there, another weapon. And then quarterback Josh Johnson, another guy that gives them some depth at quarterback. They actually have probably one of the deeper quarterback rooms now in the NFL, I would say. I think they have 4 quarterbacks on the roster that they would feel okay with going
Who's the
into a
fourth?
game. Well, they have obviously Lamar, right?
Yeah, and
And
Huntley.
backing him up is Huntley. They also have Anthony Brown, who is the Oregon quarterback from a few years ago, who's been on their roster a couple years. I think he's developed in their offense, and then there's Josh Johnson. So it's actually probably a pretty intriguing quarterback battle between Josh Johnson and Anthony Brown to see who could be that third quarterback there. Yeah.
Yeah, let's see the couple dudes they picked up in the draft. Wide receiver Zay Flowers. We talked about him.
Hmm.
Really quick, shifty guy. I don't know if you seen yesterday, but Lamar was saying he had a growth spurt and is like 6'1" now. I don't know if that's true, but that's pretty wild if that's the case.
Is that okay? So that's like been a social media trend. Is everyone
Saying
saying
he's been
everyone's
growing.
yes? So I don't know if that's like if that's serious or if he was joking.
I don't know, but I I feel like I also have been growing low key. I'm not saying I'm like 5'10" now, like that's way out of the picture, but I feel like I am getting taller low key.
Okay,
So I don't know. Who knows?
Jody,
Yeah.
20. What are you? 26? Are you my age? 26 and still getting taller. Impressive.
And then linebacker Trenton Simpson as well. So I think we also previewed in our
Yeah, I loved those Ravens picks, man. Zay Flowers and Trenton Simpson were 2 of
good
my
pick.
favorite guys at their position in the draft. Those are just 2 guys I really liked.
He was the
Yeah,
Clemson guy, right?
yes,
Yeah, that's
yes.
exactly what it was.
And then they also picked up another guy, the edge, Tavius Robinson. So they didn't have a lot of picks, but I
They did
liked
well
the
with what they
quality
had.
of their
Yeah.
picks. Yeah, I liked what they did.
And coaching staff and management that they got, general manager Eric DaCosta. Some of these general managers I do know, right, as we go along. The other ones, I was like, I don't know this guy, but he's been here for probably years.
Mhm.
Just not a name that constantly gets brought up.
Yeah.
Head coach John Harbaugh, as you talked about. What did you say? 12 years? Oh, what?
16.
16. Yeah. It's been one whole slide, and I don't know what we talked about in the beginning of the show. Let's see. Offensive coordinator Todd Monken and
Yeah,
D coordinator Mike McDonald. Is it McDonald or McDonald? or is it the
Yeah,
Steelers?
McDonald. Yeah, yeah. So one thing that I've noticed from John Harbaugh, he has not been afraid to reach into the college ranks and pull up his coordinators, even though those guys had NFL ties previously. Like Mike McDonald was on the Harbaugh staff in Baltimore, then went down to college to go coach for his brother at Michigan as the defensive coordinator, had a great season, then came back to Baltimore to be their DC last year. And I had a really good first year in Baltimore. Todd Monken, a guy who had been in the NFL before, but recently has been serving as the offensive coordinator at Georgia, and obviously has had a great run there. He went and pulled him this year to be his offensive coordinator. So Harbaugh, I think, as you look at head coaches, I think one trait that great NFL head coaches have is identifying other good coaches to be on their
Mhm.
staff,
Makes
right?
sense.
I think the best ones understand that they're going to pull guys, and if you get good ones, those guys end up being head coaches, so they leave
Yeah,
you,
that's
and
true.
then you have to replace them. So you have to be really good at identifying that, and I think Harbaugh's consistently been, part of why he's been so successful for so long because he can identify those guys. I think Tomlin's like that, right? I think
Yeah.
Belichick is like that. Last year's offensive coordinator debacle aside, I think Sean McVay is like that. I think Andy Reid is like that. Like all these guys are great head coaches because they're great coaches in their own right, but they also identify coaching
Understand.
talent and can help
Mhm.
develop those guys. And I think John Harbaugh does such a good job of that I expect Todd Monken to be another guy to just be a seamless fit for their offense.
For that. The Georgia offense, so based off what I can attest to, I would say we're going to be looking at more throws coming out of Lamar than we're probably used to. But I truly don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I saw something the other day that was like Lamar's allowed to check protections now, and I thought, wow, it's crazy he wasn't allowed to check protections before.
Yeah.
So it seems like Todd Monken's treating Lamar like a big boy, which is a
Oh,
good thing.
I
And
mean, he
there's not
got
going to
paid.
be
That's why he gets paid the big bucks.
well, there you go. Yeah, like if you're going to go get paid that much and you're an MVP, like we need to
Yeah,
take training wheels off and we need to let you have command of the offense. Yeah, if we're going to be
exactly.
successful. So I think that's a smart move. I think that's why they brought Todd Monken in. It makes a lot of sense from that standpoint. You look at their offensive line starting up front. Left tackle Ronnie Staley is good when he's healthy. That's just been the big thing, just making sure he's healthy. Patrick McCarry is his backup. Then you also have Malisala Amave Lalu at the left guard. He's a mouthful for sure. And
There
then John Simpson, a little bit easier name to say,
you go.
backing him up. Center Tyler Linderbaum, pretty good player. Right guard Kevin Zeitler. And then at right tackle, Morgan Moses with Daniel Falale backing him up. Baltimore's offensive line has always felt like a strength for it.
Hmm.
And this year, I would say, is probably no different. They have a pretty good group up front. At quarterback, obviously, talked about their quarterback room being pretty deep. Lamar Jackson, Tyler Huntley, Anthony Brown, and now Josh Johnson. That's a good group of four right there. Running back, J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, all familiar faces and names that have played for them for the last few years, especially when they've had, one or potentially all those guys hurt. They've all kind of had to play big
Yeah,
roles.
rotating out.
Um, this Ravens receiver group completely souped up and different. The one
Convincing.
guy who's back, obviously, is Rashad Bateman. He had a good start to his rookie year before he got hurt. Hopefully, he is now fully healthy, um, and we'll see him back. Behind him, you've got Nelson Aguilar.
Hmm.
Tight end, Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, two really good tight ends. I would venture to say maybe the best combo of tight ends in the NFL, best two deep. Um, at the slot position, you've got Zay Flowers coming in. James Prochet, the second, is also backing him up. And then obviously you have Odell Beckham Jr. coming in, Devin Duvernay backing him up. So
Hmm.
much better group at receiver, I would say, from a talent perspective for Lamar this year.
got to be the most like receiver weapons he's had in his time, honestly.
Yeah, it feels like it for sure. Defensively, at the edge, you got Adofe Owe and David Ajabo backing him up. Inside, Michael Pierce and Travis Jones with then Broderick Washington. On the other edge, Justin Matabuki and Brent Urban backing him up. Then at linebacker, they have a really good group. The Ravens maybe have one of the better linebacker groups, at least one of my favorite linebacker groups in the league right now. Patrick Queen, Roquan Smith, Tyus Bauer, and Trenton Simpson. Really good
Yeah.
group of 4 right there. And Trenton Simpson, one of the things I like about him, and actually really all 4 of these linebackers, they can all do different stuff, right?
Uh-huh.
You can blitz them, you can put them on the edge and let them be an edge player. You can play them at true off-ball linebacker. They're fast, they're physical. I think it's a really good group of linebackers. And Mike McDonald should have fun with them. Slot corner, Brandon Stevens. At cornerback, you've got Rock Ya-Sin and Marlon Humphrey, who's been there for a while, been a really good player. Safety, Marcus Williams and Kyle Hamilton, their first-round pick from last year, who's a pretty good player. So it's a good defensive group. I really like their linebacker depth. I like their initial starting group of DBs, not as much depth there, and they're still pretty good up front. So overall, pretty talented Ravens roster.
One quick note I have before we jump into the schedule is when you talked about the best like tight end duo, got me thinking we should probably maybe do an episode prior to the start of the season where we talk about best, receiver room or whatever, something along those lines. Get some
I'm down.
creative juices flowing.
Let's go. Let's get it.
Yeah, so the Ravens scheduled this year. Well, I'll start before we get into. I'll start kind of touching on this prediction. We both have them being pretty good. I'll say that. We both expect them to do really well. I'll say quick little tease. They're gonna improve in our minds from what they did last year. So to
Yeah.
start off, first the Texans, week 1 at home. Then they got to travel to Cincy, play the Bengals, so they get their first divisional game right there, week 2. Then they got the Colts at home. So those first couple games, 2 out of the 3, they got some possible rookie quarterbacks they might be facing. Who knows? And then week 4, 5, and 6, they travel on the road. They got the Browns. Week 4, week 5, they play in Pittsburgh, and then week 6, they got the ultimate travel going to London, playing the Titans. Week 7, they come back from London and they play the Lions. Then week 8, they're back on the road going to Arizona playing the Cardinals. Let's see, week 9, they play the Seahawks at home. And then week 10, they get the start of the second rounds of the divisional games. They play the Bengals at home. Week 11, they play Thursday night versus the Bengals at home. Now that's one that's going to be fun to watch for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Week 12, they go to LA and they play the Chargers on a Sunday night game. And then they get their bye week finally, week 13, after a long time of traveling. And then they play the Rams at home week 14. Week 15 and 16, they're on the road. Couple more primetime games here. They got the Jaguars Sunday night. Week 16, they got the Niners on a Monday night game, which also happens to be Christmas. Week 17, they play the Dolphins at home. And then week 18, they close out on the road in Pittsburgh.
So I would say that basically week 9 on, the Ravens are just going to be in a gauntlet.
Mm,
Um, they're going to play oh,
a lot
all
of
these playoff teams
teams.
/ borderline playoff teams. The Seahawks, I think that's a playoff team. The Browns, I think that's a borderline, maybe just missed. The Bengals, that's a real contender. The Chargers, I think that's a playoff team. The Rams, I think they're in the Browns boat where they're borderline. The Jaguars, they're probably a playoff team. The 49ers, that's a playoff team. The
Playoff.
Dolphins, they're kind of borderline. The Steelers, they're kind of, I mean, you're talking about basically from week 9 on, they're just going to be in,
Playoffs.
it's going to be playoff mode. Yeah. It's going to be a really tough stretch, dude. That's in totality, that might be the toughest long stretch of just grueling games that anyone has.
Yeah.
I think there are teams who have tougher 4-game stretches where you're like, okay, they're playing the 4 best teams in the league, right? Like I talked
Mhm.
about the Eagles. But like, man, over a course of not, 10 straight weeks, this is about as tough as it gets. If I was singling out a stretch, I mean, I think after the bye, where they got to play the Rams, at the Jaguars on Sunday Night Football, at the Niners on Christmas Day, first the Dolphins, at the Steelers. I think that's a tough stretch. I think it's interesting too. During this stretch, they have 4 primetime games, which can kind of take a
Yeah.
toll. It's just different. So they have these backloaded primetime games too. So I think that's the tough stretch you look at. In terms of an easier stretch, I would say it's a little earlier in the year, weeks 3 through 8. They get the
Mhm.
Colts at home. They do have to go 3 straight road games, Browns, Steelers, at Titans in London. That's not easy. So if I'm saying that's the easy stretch of their schedule, that tells you something. They get the Lions at home, and then they got to go to Arizona. I
Yeah.
I would still say, I'm saying that 6-game stretch is their easy stretch, but they have to play 4 of those games on the road, and they're playing probably 4 borderline playoff teams. You know,
That's true.
the Browns, the Steelers, the Titans, and the Lions, I would say, are all playoff or borderline playoff. The Colts and the
Mhm.
Cardinals are maybe the only 2 games on their schedule, maybe with the Texans, that you could reasonably say, okay, those 3 teams probably not playoff teams this year.
Yeah.
So the one saving grace they have, they don't play anyone coming off a bye. That does help a little bit, but yeah, it's a tough schedule, man.
Yeah. I mean, even with all that being said, though, me and you do have them doing better than 10-7. I mean, at the end of the day, it's probably gonna be like similar to like the Vikings or like the Giants where they were winning close games, but they're gonna pull them off. I mean, they got a MVP caliber quarterback. It should be happening if that's the case. So I had them going 13-4. You had them at 11-6. I mean, you talked about all the hard teams they got to play, but they got to be that team. I mean, they've done it consistently, just like the Bengals making the playoffs. Like I just think that they're gonna be the better team, and if it comes to like experience or whatever, like that's just what they got to do to prove that they're real.
hmm I could see 3-3 in the division again.
Mhm.
You pick up 3 more wins against the Texans, Colts, Cardinals, 6-3. And from there, you got to go 5-3 versus everyone else on the schedule to get to
Yeah.
that 11-6. And I think that's reasonable. And that's kind of how I did the math on this. I do
Yeah.
think Todd Monken coming in is going to help this offense be better. I think Lamar will be healthy and he'll have a good year. I think the receivers will help him. Defensively, I think they're, really good. If they had a lighter schedule, I might have been with you and said 13-4 because I like this
Yeah.
team. Think it's a tough schedule though.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I had them basically splitting the Bengals games, right? That was one of them. The Niners, I figured that's probably another one. Then I said maybe like the Chargers, they get a tough game in LA. And then at that point that leaves one more like I don't know. I maybe like another one like I said it's going to be really close. They lose to like I don't know, the Browns or something or the Seahawks, another potential team that came out the West, the NFC West last year. So that's how I saw the 4. It was like they're all gonna be close, but like I said, the Niners and like the Bengals just seem like for sure.
hmm Agreed.
And then so I had a question for you with the Ravens had to do with basically all the things that happened during the offseason. Like they beefed up the wide receiver core. Our guy Lamar got paid. They got the new offensive coordinator. And so it was basically, do you think that Lamar could become an MVP level quarterback again after all these things that just happened?
Yeah, I mean it's a good question. I mean, can he be a most valuable player again, right?
Mm,
And I think over the course of the last couple of years, he's shown flashes. Part of the problem has been, I really think this contract dispute has been a big
yeah,
deal.
that's true.
I have felt like at
Especially the
times
agent
down
thing.
the no agent. I think that's just really impacted his play down the stretch of these
I
seasons.
could agree.
It's also been tough when he's had like little nagging injuries, and you wonder like, is he not playing because he doesn't have the contract, or is he not playing because he really can't play? I mean, that's kind of tough. And so I'm excited to see this year all of that's fixed. You know what I mean? There's no excuses. And I think removing those excuses also removes distractions. And I think he can return to that form. Last year he played 12 games, threw for 220 or 2,200 yards. He had a 17-7 touchdown to INT ratio, 764 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns rushing. Not bad, not great, right? In terms of what he's used to doing. But if you're looking for evidence of like what he can do, you don't have to look farther than going back to last year against the Dolphins, right? He put up monster numbers. They ended up losing this game in a shootout with Tua, but he put up monster numbers. So here you go. You get the play action fake, hits Rashad Bateman in stride. And this is when he has like a guy like Rashad Bateman is healthy. So this is the other part is like you give him the weapons consistently throughout the season, they're all healthy. Who knows? Sky's the limit. And I love Todd Monken's going to do a lot of stuff with motion like that, I think. And that will help Lamar for sure. But this is like, yeah, this is an easy throw for Lamar, right? In terms of like, put it on your guy, give him room to run, and then let that guy go do the work.
Yeah.
Here's another play. Little play action. Step up, escape to your right, scramble. Got yards for days. Go get 20 yards on the scramble. Lamar can always do that.
Yeah.
Even if things are covered. That's the beauty of having that guy, right?
Yep. Gotta love the shifty quarterbacks, mobile.
Yep.
All give the defense something else to worry about at the end of the day.
Here he comes again. Little motion. Play action again. Find the guy in the seam. That's Mark Andrews, who's just a tank, takes the hit and keeps going, scores a touchdown. Love Mark Andrews, one of my favorite tight ends in the league.
Yeah, easily.
Again, he puts it right on him. That's the thing about Lamar. When you see the ball come out of his hands, he has that little sidearm whip that just zing, and it just comes out like crazy RPMs. Another play action on the goal line for the 2-point conversion finds Mark Andrews again. Great decision making. Does a really good job with this fake of selling it, getting the ball out.
Likely was open too on that other side.
Yeah. Here's another play. Boom, gets the ball out of the empty set, gets it right to Mark Andrews in the soft spot in the zone. Again, that guy's a tank. He still didn't get brought down. They had to blow the whistle to stop forward progress.
Yeah, my mind's got 5 dudes right there.
5 Dolphins. These won't go down. Here we go. From the 14-yard line, straight drop. Again, that zing on the ball. Poof, Devin Duvernay. I'm sorry, that's Robinson. Demarcus Robinson. Boom. Puts it on him, touchdown. So like this is when Lamar's playing at MVP form, he's doing all that stuff, right? He's getting the ball out of his hands on time. He's selling play action fakes. He's finding his best targets. He's running, he's scrambling. All that stuff is available to you when Lamar's playing his best ball. And I think we'll get a version of that in 23.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, one of his biggest issues, my man's got to poop during the game, you know?
I was not expecting you to say that today. I was not on my bingo card today.
But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to watching them for sure. The receiving core alone gives me something to watch every week for them because that's something that my man, like you said, not just the bag, but the receiving people in general, he's been lacking that extra help, especially Mark Andrews. My guy's been carrying the team basically from the receiving core, if you want to include him.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that for sure. Another team that I'm also looking forward to watching is gonna be the Bengals. They went 12-4 last year, finished first in the division, and then they ended up losing that AFC Championship game to the Chiefs.
Yeah, the Bengals have been really close. They've been close. They did have some really tough losses in free agency though.
Mhm.
particularly at safety. They lost both their starting safeties. Jesse Bates the third has been a really good player for a while for that organization. He's been a stalwart, really. He predates, you know, Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow, and
Yeah.
Von Bell, another player who's been really good for a while. Hayden Hurst had a good year for them last year at tight end. Um, People make fun of him, and he's had a kind of a tough set of
It's
moments in his career. But Eli Apple is a guy who gave them real reps last year. You know,
yeah,
that's a
for sure.
loss. Trey Flowers and another corner that they lost, and another safety, Brandon Wilson. So their secondary is going to look very
Yeah,
different this year.
same already.
Some key additions, though, they added Orlando Brown to help their offensive line, which we are going to talk about here in a little bit. They added safety Nick Scott, tight end Irv Smith Jr., quarterback Trevor Simeon, and then in cornerback Sidney Jones. So they did add some guys in that secondary, both in free agency but also in the draft, Joe.
Yeah. So the cornerback they drafted was DJ Turner the second, and they also drafted our guy Miles Murphy, edge rusher we talked about early on too.
Yeah. They drafted Jordan Battle out of Alabama, another safety I liked. They also drafted a pair of receivers in Charlie Jones from Purdue and Audrey Iasovis from Princeton. I actually met Andre at the Senior Bowl. Really, really good dude. Talked to him a little bit. He's from Hawaii.
Okay.
I think he'll be a pretty good player in the NFL. I really liked him. Thought he was really, really good dude. I'm rooting for him for sure. And then Chase Brown at running back as well, which could prove to be very important depending on what's going on with Joe Mixon. So
Yep. Yeah. I mean, when we were doing our draft preview, I was hoping they would get our guy Gibbs, but that's not the way the cookie crumbled.
yeah,
The management and coaching staff that they got there. They got general manager Duke Tobin. Duke, that's a good name. Kind of like that. Head coach Zach
yeah,
Taylor. Offensive coordinator is Brian Callahan, and then DC. I'm gonna botch this one. Lou Anarumo.
hey, you got it. You got it. Nailed it. um, so just looking up front for them, left tackle Orlando Brown Jr. Big
Mhm.
time, big time addition. He's back in the NFC North. Started in the NFC North with the Ravens, then went to the Chiefs. Now is with the Bengals. They also at left guard have Cordell Volson with Max Sharping backing him up. Center Ted Karras, Trey Hill backing him up. Right guard Alex Kappa, and right tackle Jonah Williams with Lyle Collins backing him up. Quarterback Joe Burrow with Trevor Simeon now filling the backup role there. Running back Joe Mixon, Chase Brown, and Travion Williams giving him some depth. Then going across the board at the receivers, Jamar Chase at the X with Trenton Irwin backing him up. Irv Smith Jr. becomes the tight end this year. Tyler Boyd at the R position with Charlie Jones backing him up. And then T. Higgins at Z with Andre Iosivas backing him up out of Princeton. Defensively, you've got the pair of edge players who are really good, Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson. Joseph Osai and Miles Murphy will give them some depth there as well.
Mhm.
It's always kind of a luxury if you can take a first round pick and a guy like Miles Murphy, and you've got such good edge players with Hubbard and Hendrickson that he doesn't have to start right away. So that's
Yeah.
cool. Inside, DJ Reader and BJ Hill with Josh Tupu and Zach Carter backing them up, giving them some depth. At linebacker, they have a trio of guys in Jermaine Pratt, Logan Wilson, and Akeem Davis Gaither. At the nickel corner spot, the guy who's just been good for years out of that slot corner, Mike Hilton, just total playmaker. In the secondary, I mentioned it's going to be kind of a new look for them. Cam Taylor Britt becomes a starting corner. DJ Turner backing him up. Nick Scott comes in to start at safety. Dax Hill, a first round pick from the year before, becomes the other starting safety. Jordan Battle backing him up out of Alabama. And then you have
Mhm.
Chidobe Awuzie at the other corner with Sidney Jones, giving him some depth there.
Yeah, I mean, if we're well, since I brought it up on the last one, another duo right there, Chase and Higgins, bro. Another solid group right there of
Well,
receivers.
I think it's a trio, man. Chase, Higgins, and Boyd. That's
Yeah,
a
yeah,
that's a
I
that's a
agree.
probably tough to find a better trio in the league right now.
But we gotta save that for another day. That'll be really fun. It just so happens that they just had another group of dudes that are just really good. The
Mhm.
schedule for the Bengals, they got week 1 playing the Browns on the road, so they go out to different part of Ohio, you know, Cleveland. Week 2 they play they play the Ravens at home. So like we seen earlier, they got 2 back-to-back divisional games. It's gonna be tough out the gate. Week 3 they play the Rams on a Monday night game. You know, hurts a little bit. Let's see. Week 4 they got the Titans on the road. Week 5 also on the road going out to Arizona. See, week 6 they play the Seahawks at home. The Seahawks will be coming off a bye week that week. And after following that game, they got their own bye week, week 7. And then coming out that bye week, it looks hard already. They go out to the Bay, play the Niners, and they got the Bills on the Sunday night game. Week 10, they play at home versus the Texans. Then they're back on the road playing in Baltimore on a Thursday night game. Then following that, they got another divisional game with the Steelers this time, week 12 at home. And then their prime time again, Monday night versus the Jags in Jacksonville for week 13. I'm assuming that's your tough stretch right there because that sounds like a lot. Let's see, week 14, they got the Colts at home. Week 15, they got the Vikings at home. Couple road games here. Week 16, they got the Steelers in Pittsburgh. Tough game right here. Rematch of that AFC Championship game. Playing the Chiefs in Arrowhead. And they got the Browns at home to close out the year.
Well, if you're a Bengals fan and you're looking for good news, I would say you get a decent start to the year. Um, that week, kind of 2 through 5 stretch, right? The Ravens at home is a tougher game, but you
Mhm.
get the Rams on Monday Night Football at home. Going to Tennessee, to Arizona are not absolutely
Easy.
grueling games. And even getting the Seahawks at home, despite them coming off a bye, you get them at home. You don't have to go all the way to Seattle. So I do feel like that's a pretty softer start to the year for them. I think they should be able to come out of the gates, get to the bye week at 5-1,
Yeah.
let's say, right? Um, they get the kind of early bye week 7, then they come out of that bye, and it is just, I mean, it's just brutal, man. Gotta go to the Niners. They get the Bills on Sunday Night Football. They get the Texans, the Ravens on a Thursday Night Football game, the Steelers, the Jaguars on Monday Night Football. That's not a fun stretch. I mean, the Texans game is like a little reprieve in the middle of all of it, but man, that's a really long and grueling stretch of games. Five of which of those games are teams that were all
Playoffs.
in the playoffs last year, if you include the Seahawks before the bye. So yeah, it's a tough stretch, man. Tough stretch.
That makes sense. Our record predictions were pretty similar. Wait, what Oh, you know what? I'm not even gonna say. Uh, you had them going 13-4. I had them going 14-3. I mean, like I said, with the Ravens, I had them splitting those. The Chiefs, gonna be a tough one. I figured that's probably it could be one for sure. And then outside of that, maybe I don't know, maybe like the Jags or something. That or the Bills, one of those two games for sure. I'm assuming you're in a similar mindset with those.
Yeah, I'm thinking that this year maybe they have a little bit better divisional record, maybe 4-2.
Uh huh.
And then I'm looking at they go 1-2 versus the trio of the 49ers, Bills, and Chiefs.
Yeah.
So they lose 2 divisional games and then they lose 2 out of those 3, but end up with a pretty good record here at 13-4.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're an obvious contender at this point. They're consistent. Joe Burrow is that dude for sure.
Joey is the his windows open always or whatever
Joe
he said.
Burr.
I botched the ball on his quote, but it's something along those lines. Yeah, Joe Burr or whatever or or
Oh
is it Joe
man.
Burr? like a guy
Oh
who's
yeah,
like the Joe
there you go.
Burr, like you're cold, you know.
Yeah,
Come
you
on,
could go either way on
Joe
that one.
Cool, Joe Shiesty, you know, my
Joe
man's got some
Shiesty.
good nicknames for sure. But speaking of
Yeah.
him, my question for you was: do you think that after all the consistency that they've had between him and Zach Taylor being in the squad, what do you think they need to do this coming up year for them to finally get a ring?
I think it's very simple. I think if you asked any Bengals fan, they'd have to give you the same response I'm about to give you, which is this. It's simple. Stop letting Joe Burrow get sacked. Protect
Mhm.
Joe Burrow. It's that easy. I mean, easier said than done, I should say, but it's
Yeah.
that simple in terms of the solution to their problem. You look at their last two playoff losses. Last year they
Mhm.
lost in the AFC Championship game. Do you know how many times Burrow was sacked?
I don't. I'm gonna say 8, but that was from the year before where they pulled off the game and he got sacked like 8 or more times. I don't remember.
He was sacked 5 times by the
Mm.
Chiefs. In the Super Bowl loss to the Rams the year before, he was sacked 7 times.
Yeah.
So that it's been a common theme. They've even, as you mentioned, they even managed to win some games. I mean that game a couple years ago in the wild card against or the divisional round against the Titans,
Uh huh.
where Burrow was sacked, whatever it was, like 9 or 10 times or something like
Yeah.
that,
Crazy.
and they still won, was absolutely insane. Joe Burrow he's
Oh.
the man and he's a monster, but the guy's already suffered an ACL injury and
Uh-huh.
he's young right now, so he's still really durable. He's still bouncing back. But if this keeps happening, that one, you're not going to win on the biggest stage, which is
Yeah.
shown they can get there, but they can't win it yet.
Mm-hmm.
And two, that guy's durability is going to stop being what it is. He's going to slowly wear down. No one wants to see another Andrew Luck type situation, right? They need to
Yeah.
protect this
Really.
guy. They need to
Yeah.
protect him. That's all there is to
That's
it.
a fact. That's. I mean, just those 4 games alone, that's like almost 30 sacks that we talked about. And those are just playoff games. That's not even the whole season.
Exactly. He's taking way too much punishment. I went back and I was like, man, why did they lose that AFC Championship game? I watched the whole game um, in preparation for this, and I came away thinking, man, they really should have won the game. The problem was they couldn't protect Burrow in big moments. So this was their final drive, which they ended up punting. They
Right.
ended up having to punt. They have the big return. Then all it takes is one play plus a penalty on the late hit on Mahomes, and then now all of a sudden Chiefs are in field goal range to kick field goal. Game's over. Right.
Yeah.
This game could have been completely different had they just protected Burrow, because I know that cat would have let him down the field. They would have been the ones kicking the field goal for the win. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So here's the first play, at least the first play I'm going to show you of this possession, 1st and 10 after they'd already got a first down. He throws to Hayden Hurst in the flat. He goes through the progression, nothing there. No problem. Checks it down to Hayden Hurst off the check release at tight end. Let him get the ball, try and get out of bounds. They keep it rolling, get back up on the ball. Here we go. 2nd and long. Gets back. They actually protect him well, but there's,
Yeah. A little bit of holding.
there's not enough. They're having to max protect too much right now to give him protection. So there's not enough players in the route, right? So there's 7-man protection here. It's only 3, that only leaves you 3 guys in the route and no one can get open. Well, now they're going to have to go, at least 4 out, 5 out on 3rd and long. They go 5 out, but they can't protect him.
Mm-hmm.
So now he gets sacked by Chris Jones,
Yeah.
right? And that's all there is to it. I mean, it's really that simple. The drive is over. I don't have a million clips to show you. It's really, this is where it came down to. They punt after this and the game is over. Once they punt it away to Mahomes. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah. I
it.
think that same dude had a big sack early on like a different drive as well, where it's just
Yep.
like, yeah.
It's a drive killer. I mean, and
Yeah.
they can't protect Burrow consistently enough to be a championship team right now. And so bringing in Orlando Brown, that's huge.
Yeah.
Huge. They tried to upgrade their offensive line last offseason, and I think it was better, but
I
it
think,
still was not up to par.
yeah.
Bringing in Orlando Brown, I think could potentially really be the last little part of this upgrade, the last piece that they need to potentially go win a Super Bowl or at least get back to one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, Like you said, easier said than done. I'm looking forward to obviously watch this team. They're a great team in the most recent years. Them, the Chiefs, another one. Niners, as always, for since Shanahan's been there, basically. So it's gonna be good, especially with the division. It's just crazy. But the
Yeah.
last taking a look at today, we got the Steelers. They went 9-8. Like I said, my guy Mike Tomlin just never goes under 500, as far as we know. He's finished third in the division last year with that, and then they missed the playoffs because the Ravens and the Bengals snuck in.
Yep. Man, Mike Tomlin, what a run. He always figures it out. Rookie quarterback, no problem. Mitchell Trubisky, no problem. Big Ben's hurt, no problem. Like whatever it is, like we don't have Antonio Brown, we don't have this, we don't have that, we're missing this guy. It doesn't matter. The guy is a model of consistency.
Mhm.
Now, have they had much high level success in the last 7 or 8 years? No. They really haven't had a lot of playoff success. Like I said, they're actually the team with the longest playoff win drought in the division right now. They haven't won a playoff game since 2016. But in terms of putting themselves in position to be there at the end, they're always there. They're always got a shot to make the playoffs. And I think this year is no different. You look at what they lost. There are some losses, significant losses. They lost William Jackson at corner, Cam Sutton as well at corner. Miles Jack is still a free agent. He may still come back to this team. I don't know. Chris Wormley has been a guy who played D-line for them for quite a while, and he's going to be gone. Robert Spillane at linebacker went and signed with the Raiders. They lost Devin Bush as well. They lost safety Terrell Edmonds, running back Benny Snell, corner Akello Witherspoon, fullback Derek Watt is still a free agent out there. So it may be a different kind of looking team because a lot of these guys were veterans, have been on this team for a while.
Yeah.
But they also brought in some big names at guard. Isaac Siamalu is a big deal.
Yeah.
Trading for receiver Allen Robinson is huge. They brought in cornerback Patrick Peterson. Just those three names alone let you know, like they're serious about becoming a better football team this year. They also brought in linebacker Cole Holcomb. Guard Nate Herbig gives them some depth. Safety Keanu Neal, edge Marcus Golden, and then D lineman Braden Fehoko also give them depth defensively.
Mm-hmm.
And then they added some more, big time players in the draft.
Yeah, they drafted Broderick Jones, who we touched on during our tackle review. And then they got Joey Porter as well in that second round. I know at the end of the day, your uncle, man, I don't know what he did, but he could be in this management group over here because he called the
He
shot.
called both of them. Called
Yeah.
both of them. And then they also drafted Keanu Benton and at D line, and then tight end Darnell Washington later in the draft as well. I think the Steelers maybe have one of the best drafts in the league
Oh,
this year. I mean, they could prove to have drafted 4 starters,
yeah, true.
which is always a good draft. If you can do that, that's pretty impressive. So I really liked what they did.
Yeah, and then the people, who would get credit for those and people that are get coached by them. We got general management Omar Khan, head coach Mike Tomlin, who we talked about many times today. Longest tenured guy, or second longest tenured guy on a coaching staff. Let's see, offensive coordinator Matt Canada, and then D coordinator is gonna be Terrell Austin.
Mm-hmm.
Cool name.
They again they kept some. I said this was an organization that models consistency. Certainly, have had that in their coaching staff, and Mike Tomlin decided to keep that group together going into this year, despite some people wanting Matt Canada to be fired. I would say he's given him another shot with this group with Kenny Pickett, which I think is a good thing for Kenny Pickett, to be honest with you, to have the same OC,
Yeah.
back to back, at least to start his NFL career here. Kind of looking at the guys he's going to be able to play with, though. Left tackle, Broderick Jones projects to start right away. Dan Moore should be his backup. At guard, Isaac Siamalu should plug in right there at the left guard. Mason Cole at center has been pretty good. At right guard, you've got James Daniels and Nate Herbig. And then at right tackle, you've got Oh, let me make sure that I say this right. Chukwuma Okorafor at right tackle. Nailed it. And then LaRaven Clark is his backup as well, giving them some depth there. At quarterback, Kenny Pickett with Mitch Trubisky coming back to be his backup. You also have Mason Rudolph as well to be the third guy. Running back, you got Najee Harris, and then you also have Jalen Warren backing him up. I know my uncle likes Jalen Warren.
Been pretty good
At,
when I was out, or like
yeah,
reps, so makes sense.
mm-hmm. He's a good little back. At the X receiver, George Pickens. Seen a lot of hype about him recently on social media. Everyone's saying George Pickens is going to have a big year. We'll see.
I haven't seen. I need to get on that side of Twitter.
Oh man, I saw something that said his receiver coach considered his rookie year a failure,
Whoa.
and they were both like, "Oh, he's going to be way better this year." We'll see. Hakeem Butler gives them some depth there. Pat Fryermuth at tight end, Deontay Johnson in the slot with Miles Boykin giving him some, giving some reps behind him, and then outside you've added Allen Robinson to play at the Z. So different weapons this year for Kenny Pickett in terms of adding Allen Robinson, but a lot of consistency otherwise. The offensive line should be upgraded, especially that left side with Broderick Jones and Isaac Seumalo. So I think this offense should take a step forward as long as Matt Canada is leading it that way. Defensively, you got TJ Watt and Larry Ogunjobi on the edges with Marcus Golden and Alex Highsmith giving him some depth there. Inside, Keanu Benton and Cameron Hayward with Braden Fajoku and Isaiah Loudermilk giving him depth. At linebacker, Cole Holcomb projects to come in and start with a Landon Roberts at Mike. Tanner Muse is another guy that came over that should be backing him up. Linebacker is going to be a very interesting position for the Steelers this year, especially if they do not ever bring back Miles Jack. I kind of feel like they will, to be honest with you, based on looking at this group right now. Feels like they're missing something at linebacker. So we'll see. Interesting, I've noticed that they're projecting Patrick Peterson to start at the slot corner rather than the outside corner, which kind of makes sense with what they have going on in this defense. He's the playmaker they've been missing at that slot corner since Mike Hilton left. So that could be a huge deal for them. But speaking of outside corner, you got Levi Wallace with Joey Porter Jr. starting, and then Corey Trice Jr. and James Pierre giving them some depth. Then at safety, Minka Fitzpatrick, the playmaker, DeMonte Casey starting next to him, Trey Norwood and Keanu Neal giving them some depth.
Yeah, sounds good, man. Our guy Patrick Peterson, that's one dude who's been thrown around everywhere recently, but he still does his job. Great playmaker on defense for sure.
Well, yeah, the crazy thing is he was really productive for the Vikings.
Yeah.
I think it's a good pickup for the Steelers. He fits the Steelers, and like I said, it's interesting seeing him like play in the slot. Because I think at this stage in his career, he could be pretty good there.
What would you say is the difference between playing like a traditional corner and then the slot?
Well, your roles and responsibilities are almost completely different, right? On the outside corner, oftentimes, especially if you're pattern matching, so if you're man is man, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't. The difference there would be you're playing against slot receivers versus the outside receivers, so the matchups are a little different. But that's not really too different. But if you're playing zone coverages, if you're playing like match quarters or cover 3 match or whatever, a lot of times you're going to pretty much end up covering that number one receiver on most route concepts. So your job is fairly easy from a thought process perspective and pattern matching. However, your job is hard because a lot of times you're on that island. Whereas inside, your job from a thought process perspective can be very different. Like sometimes you're going to be a blitzer. Sometimes you're playing a true zone coverage. You might be playing the flat. Sometimes you're kind of in a carry technique where you're going to carry that guy on everything outside and vertical. Sometimes you may even play a hook depending on what's happening with the pressure. whatever. Like you could do a lot of different jobs
Mm-hmm.
inside the slot. You have a lot more responsibilities. But you're also protected a little bit more because you have a corner outside of you, a safety behind you. So it's a little different, just in terms of you have to be more durable and adaptable in the slot, is what I would say. But if you're a really smart player like Patrick Peterson is, I think you can do a little bit more and, take advantage of your skill set. And that's
Yeah.
why, like, for instance, Jalen Ramsey played in the slot a lot with the Rams, just
Uh,
because it was like, hey, get him around the ball, utilize his talents more than just sticking him outside.
okay.
But everyone's thought process, philosophy is different, and it's also defense dependent, like what your job really ends up being in there.
Gotcha. Well, there's our learning segment for this episode.
There you go,
Find
learning
out more
segment for the day.
about the schedule that the Steelers got this year, following that beautiful answer from our guy TB, the DC. Oh, that's kind of fire. We got the Steelers coming off hot already. They play the Niners week 1. Tough start to the season. But they got the Browns week 2 Monday night, playing their first divisional game at home, of course. Week 3 they go out to Las Vegas. They're playing on a Sunday night game versus the Raiders. Week 4 they're traveling again out to Houston this time, playing the Texans. And then week 5 they got that Ravens game at home, second divisional game right there. All prior to their bye week on week 6. Then following that, they travel out to LA to play the Rams. Oh, that could be, keep that on my watch list. Maybe make that one. Let's see. Week
Mm-hmm.
8, they play the Jaguars in Pittsburgh. Oh, they get 3 home games right here following that Rams game. So they got the Jaguars week 8. Week 9, they got the Titans on a Thursday night game. So quick week on that one. Week 10, they got the Packers. See, now that sounds like a fun game. That's we could see maybe Kenny Pickett shining, maybe Jordan Love, Week 10 weeks in, gonna be a good one, I think. Week 11, they travel out to Cleveland, so they play them again already. Week 11. Week 12, they go out to Cincy, so they're staying in Ohio with those games right there. Playing the Bengals finally. Let's see. Week 13, they got the Cardinals at home. Week 14, another Thursday night game. See, this is what we need more, bro. The young, fun teams on the Thursday night game where we can, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Maybe
it's a good rivalry game with the Pats.
yeah, that's a classic game right there for sure. It's a good call by you. Week 15, they got the Colts on the road, so they're traveling out to Indianapolis. They close out with 3 out of the last 4 on the road. That's kind of tough. But
That's a
week
good
16,
good segue for me, Joe.
week 16 they got the Bengals on the road. Well, not just the fact that they're on the road, but a lot of these teams right here, some hitters right here at the end. The 16 they got the Bengals at home in Pittsburgh. Travel out to Seattle. That's a far travel, going cross country basically. And then week 18
Mhm.
they close out going to Baltimore versus the Ravens.
Dude, I don't know if anyone has a rougher final 2 games. At Seattle, at Baltimore. Good luck. Like, whatever your record is going into week 17, you probably just tack two losses onto it because those
Yeah.
2 games on the road are gonna be really hard, like, I mean, real tough games. I think weeks 14 through 18 is their toughest stretch of the season. Having to play the Pats on Thursday Night Football, it's never fun when you're a young quarterback playing against Bill Belichick. Not only that, but you're playing him on a short week. Maybe at the Colts is an easier game per se, but then you got to come back and you got the Bengals in the division, at the Seahawks, at the Ravens. Yeah, 3 of those final 4 on the road. Those last 2 being on the road being really tough ones. You have the short week against Billy B in week 14. That's a rough final 5 games, I would say. That's a tough stretch right there. On the flip side, though, they do actually have a softer opening, I would say.
Okay.
Weeks 2 through 7, pretty light. I mean, they get to play the Browns on Monday Night Football. They got to go to the Raiders for Sunday Night Football. They got to go to the Texans. They get the Ravens at home. Tougher
Mhm.
game, but it's at home. And then they go to the Rams off the bye week where they get the rest advantage.
Yeah.
So I think that's a pretty good recipe for them to win at least 3 of those 5, if not 4. Um,
True.
I would say that they would feel pretty good about them winning, the Browns, Raiders, Texans game and probably the Rams game because they get the bye week before it. So,
Yeah.
I would say that they should feel good about coming out of that stretch, with 4 wins. I would expect them by the time week 7 is done, I would expect them to be sitting at somewhere around 4-2.
Yeah. I mean, very doable for sure. Like it is, those games are a little lighter compared to the end of their season for sure. I will say this is the one we didn't really agree on. I had them doing worse than their 9-8. I had them going 7-10. You had them improving to 10-7. I mean, I don't know. I know I've been mentioning a lot about our guy Mike Tomlin, but I just feel
I'm very
that he's
surprised
gonna
and
want.
disappointed in you right now.
Yeah.
I am.
Well,
Yeah.
it's funny. After I heard you talk about their additions, I was like, dang, I should have read more into this because I normally just look at the schedule and go
I-
win, lose, maybe
my my
with
favorite
those.
thing about doing this with you is every time I
Every
go
time I tell
through,
you,
every time I go through like my whole thought process with you,
yeah.
somehow I sway you to be like, man, I'm not really convicted in my prediction anymore.
It happens every time. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but there's always at least one of them. I can guarantee that. It's
This
always
is
funny too.
this is definitely more fun because if we, to give everyone the peek behind the curtain, like Joe and I do not talk about this before we get on the pod. I mean, we talk about like we have a game plan, obviously we have like pre-production, but like we
Yeah.
don't talk about what we think our predictions are, or what we think and why. We don't go through that stuff. We really do it live on the pod. I think for this reason, because it's a more genuine reaction and you actually get to see both of us in terms of our thought process
Yeah.
before we actually talked it out, so that it's genuine and it's not just like a group think, oh, okay, we have the same records on everyone. It's a little more fun this way.
Well, not
Because
even like like you said, it keeps the variability, but there's times when I don't know if you noticed, but I got these in early because I was
oh
like
yeah.
sometimes I get yours and I was like, should I give them one more? And I was like, you know what, nah. So I made sure to get them in before you, so I didn't have to deal with that this week.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's good. Well, it's funny because there's been certain things that you've said before too, where I've kind of been like, maybe I overthought that, or
Uh-huh.
I didn't think about that thing, like. So it definitely goes both ways, I would say.
Yeah, but my question for you for this Steelers team would be, do you think you could get more consistency out of this wide receiver core to help out Kenny Pickett improve from last year to this year?
I do, and I think part of the reason why I have them upgrading by a game in 23, I think one, the additions on the offensive line. I do think that left side of their offensive line is going to be much better. And then two, I think they can be much better with their receiving core. I think Pickens, Deontay Johnson can both be better. And then adding Allen Robinson makes things a little more dangerous.
True.
Um, I looked at kind of statistically what their guys looked like last year. George Pickens as a rookie went 52 catches for 801 yards, 4 touchdowns. Deontay Johnson went 86 catches for 882 yards, no touchdowns.
Ooh,
Allen Robinson, 33 catches, 339 yards, 3 touchdowns with the Rams, shut down obviously very early.
yeah.
And then Pat Freiermuth, 63 catches, 732 yards, 2 touchdowns. I think it's realistic for them to have at least one, if not two guys over 1,000 yards this year. And then
Definitely.
the other guy being around that 800 mark and Freiermuth once again being between 700 and 800 yards receiving. I think that's if they went with, I mean, obviously it would be spectacular if they had 2,000-yard receiving guys and then two 800 receiving yard, guys. But I do think they can get more consistency out of Pickens in year two. Deontay Johnson needs to be better. He was better earlier in his career. He needs to kind of get back to form. And then I think Allen Robinson can help a lot. So I was kind of studying these different receivers and looking at what they do best. And I kind of have like, two clips of every guy in terms of what they can bring. So here's George Pickens. This was, I believe, Christmas Eve.
Okay.
Last year or somewhere around there. I think that's when they played the Raiders, but I just remember this was a great game, went down to the wire. George Pickens scores the game-winning touchdown. So here he is in the red zone. One thing that Pickens does a really good job of, he attacks the leverage of the player covering him. You see that? See how you really this DB is in an outside carry technique. So he's going to
Uh-huh.
carry everything vertical and outside. He's going to stay top shoulder. And so what George Pickens identifies is like, if that's your leverage, I'm going to attack that leverage and make you stick to your guns, right? And then I'm going to use that against you and cut back underneath. And so he's really, really pressing this thing outside to not only get this defender moving outside, but also give himself space when he breaks back in between him and that safety, that next defender. And it gives Kenny Pickett a great window to throw this ball into. Now he's fitting the ball between the outside defender and the inside defender. George Pickens, touchdown.
Money. Yeah,
I
that
can't
game
make the
was
play.
Christmas Eve.
There we go. Yeah, okay, I thought so. But this was just the route, the stem of the route was fantastic because he creates so much space. Football is a game of space, man. If you can create it with
That's
your concept
dedication right
and in the way that you run your route, you'll win every time. And so look at all that space he creates for Pickett. Pickett, great ball. I mean, perfect placement. Puts it on the money. Game winner. Huge.
Bye bye.
Okay, here's another one. You'll see sitting in the slot down here. Again, see how he gets inside leverage, right? He gets inside of the leverage of the defender. Okay, now he's dropping to the flat. Now I can work back on top, stack it,
Money.
boom, touchdown. Now this is also, I think, partially a blown coverage by the Browns
Yeah.
because there's no way he should be that open. But again, attacking leverage, creating open space for himself. Kenny Pickett identifies it, gets all the way back across the field, slings it in there, touchdown. Great play by Pickens. Okay, now here's Deontay Johnson. Bottom of the screen here.
Mm.
He's going to work inside to get back out. Fantastic on the out route. He's really shifty.
Good, good,
Great change of direction.
good route running.
This is what he does a really good job of. He can work you one way to go the other. This is even with Mitchell Trubisky at quarterback, who actually makes a great throw here. Puts it on the money, gives him a guy the space to come back and create some yak. All right, now we go to Allen Robinson. He's really good at working the middle of the field. This is off the play action with the Rams. Boom, Stafford puts it on him, takes the hit. Great play from him. This was his best game against the Panthers for sure in a Rams uniform. Attacks the middle of the defense. He's also great in the red zone. You see him in the bottom of the screen here. One-on-one fade ball matchup. Stafford loves throwing this ball. Just boop. Throw it on the money. Great play. Goes up and gets it.
Yeah.
He's really good at creating that space in the red zone and then also being able to jump and just beat a guy to the ball. Great throw. Great play. Okay, Freiermuth, another guy who's fantastic in the red zone because he's got a big body. He's catch radius is insane, and he's got a little shift to him where he can be on an island and make this play. Look, he's really 1-on-2 right now because he knows he's got this guy in man coverage, and now there's this guy sitting here in the middle of the field. Now, if you look at it, they're really essentially showing you a kind of a 2-on-2 look backside and a 4-over-3 look front side with 5 guys in the pressure, right?
Yeah.
That's what they're showing you right now. So really, Kenny Trubisky, looks like Trubisky's playing quarterback here, identifies early. He's got the matchup with Freiermuth. You'll see Najee's running in the route. Where does that backer go? Takes him away. So it vacates this middle of the field, and Freiermuth knows if I can just get this guy leaning outside, I'm going to get back underneath. And look what he did. See how he gained inside leverage now?
Yeah.
It's game over. It doesn't. I mean, it doesn't
Almost like
matter
a
what the
pick.
defender
Low
does.
key.
Yeah,
Low
it
key.
doesn't matter what that defender does anymore because he's inside. So
Yeah.
all Trubisky has to do is just put the ball
Open
inside.
man.
Touchdown. That's just. I mean, when you're that big of a body and you get inside on the goal line like this, it's over. No one's gonna go through him because he's just too big. That's why he's such a matchup problem. Here it is again. right here. Now they put him in the bunch on the outside, and watch what he's gonna do. So he's patient. He creates. He sees where it opens up. It creates one-on-one. Now again, I'm gonna try and work inside of you and use my body, use my frame. And look, he gets inside, and now it's over. Kyle Hamilton got rookied right there. That was his rookie. That was a rookie moment for him. He got big boyed by Freiermuth. You can see it again here. You'll see Trubisky's waiting on it too. He knows that's what he wants the whole time. Look at you see it? He's staring it down really because he knows. Oh, he creates that inside position. It's game over. So all of these guys give you something a little bit different. And I think with a full year of Kenny Pickett in the Matt Canada offense, all these guys being healthy, I do think they could give him more consistency, and they should be a better team offensively with a better offensive line as well. I really like the Steelers going into 23 for that reason.
Yeah, I will say, I don't know if it was Deontay Johnson or the other guy. I can't remember his name. They would drop open balls, man. It was bad. They'd be wide open, hit them, just straight rocks, and it's like that's a TD. That's house. You know what I mean? So that is one thing for sure that makes perfect sense. If they could improve on those little things, like they're gonna be scary for sure.
I agree. I think Deontay Johnson's a guy who really needs to have a bounce back here. Allen Robinson's another guy. He wasn't with Steelers last year, but he had a rough year.
Yeah.
Needs a bounce back year. I think obviously I talked about George Pickens. Apparently that wasn't I thought it was a good rookie year for him, but it wasn't up to his standard for himself. That's great. Be better this year. So I do think there's a lot of room for improvement, and I do think all those guys are talented enough that they will.
Yeah, I feel it. So the banger of the week, we made it to that time of the show. I guess it's me, huh?
Yeah, it
My
is your
question
turn,
for
my
you.
friend.
My question for you: do you want what I was gonna give you, or the change of mind I had on my way home today?
Oh, the spur of the moment's always better. Yeah, change your mind.
All right, so I'm sure you'll agree with this one. On my way home, I threw on like my go-to playlist, right?
Okay.
Drake, J. Cole, Kanye, and I kind of just
Fantastic
let it
group of
ride after
artists.
the gym. Let it just ride. I was like,
Okay.
I haven't sat down and fully listened to it. I kind of just go pick a couple songs, and then that by the time that happens, I'm already where I need to be. But on my way home, we had J. Cole pop on. Now I'm sure you can guess the album. Me and you spent many a time listening,
2014 Forest Hills Drive, baby.
and Fire Squad came on, and
Oh
my
yeah,
my,
good
my
song.
guy goes in on like 4 to 5 bars. I was singing with them. I was going crazy, and I was like, wow. I haven't sat down and listened to this in a minute. You know what
Man, takes me back to the Lobo.
I
Oh man, I remember we were juniors in high school,
Yeah.
going into
No,
our
I feel like
senior year,
yeah.
and
I don't know why.
we used to. I used to park next to Joey every day, hop
Yeah.
out of my car, hop
I
into
remember.
his. Yeah, we'd get there before school like 30 minutes early
Yeah, I had
for
to
whatever
because my
reason.
car wasn't the best when I had to sit in traffic. So I would always leave at like 6:50, 6:55 latest because I live down the block. I could just pull up
Mhm.
straight through the light sometimes. But that was my reasoning. I mean, you lived a little farther away. You probably wanted to beat traffic as well.
Yeah, I think my thing was I was farther away, traffic was unpredictable, so I just left early enough so I wouldn't have to deal with it, yep.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we would just, to kill time, I'd just hop out of the car, hop in your car, we park next to each other every day, hop in the old Lobo, and basically once that album came out, dude, you had it on CD, remember that?
Yeah. No,
Literal
that was
CD, which even for 2014 was crazy.
yeah.
And we used to just listen to to the album, just, like, let it run through, like,
Mhm.
almost every day for, like, at least a few weeks in a row.
And then we would just rotate. I think like another one I would always throw on was like the ASAP one. I don't even remember what it was
Yep,
called at that time. Mm,
and then Drake, if you're reading this,
Yeah,
it's too late. Yep,
yeah. Good times.
yep. Good times, man. Good times. Those takes us back.
But yeah, uh, I c- nah, I'm not gonna do it. I was gonna say I could do it too for like you did that one week, but I'm not gonna steal your juice. That was
Save
good.
it, bro.
Yeah.
Save it for the next
Maybe,
one.
maybe next time, maybe you have this one that I was gonna do.
There we
Anyways.
go. All right. So in summary, we both like the Bengals
Mm-hmm.
to
And
win the
Ravens.
division. We like the Ravens finishing second. We like the Steelers finishing third. Browns finishing last. Just
Mm-hmm.
in maybe slightly different records, but essentially similar order, similar records. So we'll see what happens. And
Slight
we will
improvement
be
though from the
back.
bottom.
Yeah, we will be back next week with the NFC North. We'll be talking
Yep.
Vikings, Packers,
Gonna be
Bears,
looking.
and Lions.
Might be a new top five.
There we go, baby. So come in and check us out. Obviously, follow the pod on all of our platforms: Apple, Spotify, Amazon. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you go check us out on YouTube if you want to see the clips we're talking about and see our pretty faces, all the great graphics we create. You know, you get a little extra if you go watch it on
Shout out
YouTube.
TB. He's always done a good job. He's done basically anything that has to do with the graphics that we've ever done from the beginning of time. And I don't ever throw him his flowers for those, but he kills it every time. He always
Appreciate
finds a
it.
way to get improved every time. Crazy.
Appreciate
I
it.
don't know. I tried doing a couple things on like Photoshop, and I don't understand it at all. I had to go watch a
So
video, another one.
we're a
Boom, boom.
two-man operation. We each have our specialties.
Yeah,
Mine's
that's
creating graphics. Yours is producing and editing all the sound because I can't do any of that. So
uh,
yeah, I think we figured out this is a two-man show right now, and we're both the hosts, co-hosts, producers,
yeah.
graphic creators,
The graphic
writers. We do it all.
design.
So if you're listening and you like it, it's pretty much just us two to take all the credit. We take it all. Yep.
Not wrong.
Um,
Not wrong.
but yeah, if you're still listening, watching, we appreciate you.
As
And
always.
obviously, yep, follow, subscribe, all the good stuff, and come back next week for the NFC North, baby. We're getting closer to the start of training camp. We're getting there. Keep
Yep.
sticking with us. We'll almost be there.
Yeah, we got a
But
couple more of these and boom, season.
there we go, baby. But stick with us. And until that next time, we got our guy Ray taking us
Sir.
out.